So when we think about accountability as setting the condition for success versus chasing people down to do what they didn't do, it gives us a lot more power to intervene, and it has us come from a place of partnership, not parental control.
Welcome to Season 2 of Leadership Impact, the podcast for modern executives who are reinventing leadership within their organizations. With your host, Executive Leadership Coach and CEO of the Granger Network, Kari Granger, and me, Paul Adams, CEO of Sound Financial Group. This season focuses on accountability, and to support you in increasing accountability in yourself and in those you lead, we're providing a special rate for our listeners who want to engage in one of our accountability courses. Text the word accountability to 555-888 for more information. This is episode 20, the importance of creating a condition for success.
Welcome back to the Leadership Impact. Today, we're going to speak about why accountability and our relationship to accountability. And hopefully by the end of the episode, you'll have a different way of thinking about accountability such that it brings a high level of ambition and personal power, and you actually have some practical things to begin to think about as we get into it. And, this is really in contrast to what I hear most of the time, which is accountability is this necessary evil that we have to do after the fact when things go wrong. And it's all about chasing people down to make them do what they're supposed to do versus setting the condition for accountability and thereby the condition for success way ahead of time. That is just kind of part of the environment in which we're working. So that's really what this episode is about. And Paul, it's always my intention that you and I get something out of this episode ourselves. I'm curious what you're bringing right off the bat.
Well, I think it's to your point, either things go wrong or not as well as they're supposed to be going is where people reach into their bag of skills around accountability. And that certainly was the case for me in the example today, which actually comes from something that we do at Sound Financial Group now. As you're well aware, our clients are kind of in that top 1% income realm between $300,000 to $2 million of income. So these are people that are very busy, have a lot of the environmental pressures on their calendar to even be able to take the time to spend enough to learn enough about money to make solid decisions about it. And it really, what I'm going to share about comes as a bit of an evolution as an example. And I don't know that we're all the way there, but it's trying to create those conditions. And it started when we used to meet people in person. But we realized that it would take 6 to 8 meetings over a couple, 3 months for people to make an effective decision about their money. Clients initially say, yes, we want that coaching process. We're up for the 8 to 10 meetings over 12 weeks. But then later on in the process, they, not always, but periodically people get fatigued, and fatigue leads to some kind of agitation as they go through the process, despite the fact they paid a pretty decent chunk of money to work with us.
Totally, Paul. And how often do we also see that in our own organizations where we get really committed up front to what we're going to accomplish. And then as time goes on, we wane interest
Yes.
or wane commitment or engagement. This is one of the reasons why I like to talk about accountability from a different paradigm. Here's what often happens is when confronted with a situation like what you're speaking about, you now have to chase after your clients to get them to do something that they initially wanted to do, right? And then you start getting in this kind of weird parental control kind of thing where it's like, you don't want to be a parent, but you're kind of like you got to come on the call, you have to do, and then it's like this weird, how do you hold them to account? They're giving you their reasons and their justifications and their explanations for why they can't come, but you've promised them an outcome. I mean, it just gets really not fun, right? Something like that.
Yes.
When this happens in our teams, we do have a little bit more maybe authority, right? In our teams, if we're a supervisor and we say, then we're a little harsher than maybe we are with clients, right? And it's like, hey, you need to do this. You said you were going to do this. And unfortunately, as supervisors, we often ask them for, hey, why isn't this complete? Okay. So that's basically how accountability goes, is something's supposed to happen and then it doesn't happen. And now we got to, use our force and authority to try to make them make it happen. And the whole thing is really not fun. It can be uncomfortable and for both parties. Okay.
I've got to give you like one thing we've done to try to repair that over time is we added to our initial scope of work document is a line that we review with everybody. Is there may be a point at which we have to say to you, remember you paid us to talk to you this way. And which I think it's cute and kind of funny. It's there and it presents that as upfront before you engage us, know that could happen at one point. But how much better it would be if the conditions were such that we didn't have to have that.
Yeah, exactly. So now you're trying to mitigate the fact that you're now saying, by the way, we're going to come and be jerks trying to get you to do this stuff. And I just wanted to warn you ahead of time that this is going to happen.
I would prefer to say we won't be jerks, but we might be perceived as such.
Yeah, just to let you know, you're going to not do what you said you're going to do. And we're going to have to tell you that you didn't do that. And just remember, you're paying us to tell you need to do what you said.
Very good. I think we should just make that the new contract language. Thank you, Kari. And everybody at home. But that is what we're communicating. And our best effort so far has just been to put that on the front end and get agreement to it so that we can reference back to it. But even that is not the ideal way we'd want every relationship to be.
Because you're saying we're going to do this after the fact accountability thing where we have to chase you down. So I'd like to introduce a different way of thinking about accountability. The best metaphor that I can think of is actually back when I was in aircraft maintenance in the Air Force. And we had these different statuses that we would put the aircraft in, different categories, right? So when all component parts are working in harmony, fully mission capable aircraft. It can accomplish all of its missions. I think most of us run around partially mission capable. Okay, we can accomplish some of our missions, but not all of them, or not all of them as well as we really would like to accomplish them. So partially mission capable, could be being unable to control or influence a situation, or not getting enough sleep, or, being at the mercy of relationships, or unable to count on others, or out of control email, or, the land of empty promises, like let's get coffee sometime, or I'm going to start my workout on Monday, but I know it's always Monday, right? Or just surviving the cultural distrust, or in your world, financial blindness. Like I know I have investments and whatnot, but I don't know what it is, or speeding ticket, or unequal expectations, or, it just goes on, but it's like parts of my life are working, some aren't, and not all are working in harmony. The list can really go on. And then that kind of renders us partially
and
mission
capable. What's the one below partially mission capable?
That's like not safe for flight. Okay. That's non-mission capable. You are not safe for flight. And that's like, key components, or here's the key, an accumulation of several components are either not working or they're not working together. They're not in sync. When each component's working and each component's working together, we actually have a condition that provides us with the optimal opportunity to perform. So if you have an FMC aircraft, you still got to have the pilots that fly the mission. They still have to do a good job on the mission, right? But at least they have the biggest opportunity to perform. Whereas in partially mission capable, It's like, okay, you could have the best pilots in the world, but you're only even getting the chance to perform at 50%. So I think like with your clients, it's like, look, at the outset, we have this huge opportunity to perform together. And as long as we're each doing our parts and we're also in sync together, like we're showing up on meetings on time, we've done our, our assignments in between the meetings. I've come prepared. Like you got to do your part and come prepared. They got to do their part and come prepared. And you got to come together. We get to perform at 100%. But when some of us aren't doing our parts, we only get the opportunity to perform at 50%. And when we don't do our parts at all, there's no opportunity. You get zero ROI on this. The different model of accountability that I want to introduce to us is accountability is actually not the thing after the fact. It's rather the thing before the fact that we do together to set the condition for performance, to set the condition for the optimal success. So when we think about accountability as setting the condition for success versus chasing people down to do what they didn't do, it gives us a lot more power to intervene, and it has us come from a place of partnership, not parental control. It also has us set up ahead of time, like, accountability begins with the actor's promise. It begins with, it's kind of what you said, it's what they wanted. It's the commitment that they see, right? So now accountability is being in partnership to accomplish what we're mutually committed to accomplishing. So it's more commitment-based accountability versus person-based, like it's dependent on you to chase them down. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole lot of things that go into that we're really going to be getting into over the next several episodes. Like even what are some organizational structures and practices that we can put in place that kind of hold us to account versus me having to hold you to account. So the structure itself holds us to account. It helps us, it supports us, it partners with us to get done what we said was really important to get done.
That sounded to me like was a conversation somebody could actually have with, say, like their team. Is that, I don't know if you can say it again or if that came right off the top of your head, but the ability to speak with the other people involved in saying, what do we need to do to produce this outcome? Or what do we need to be accountable to produce this outcome, instead of what do I need? Because I think oftentimes leaders are thinking to themselves, like, what do I need to do to make this work? So then I might have to do things to these 5 other team members to have them cajoled along enough to get the thing done.
Right. Like it's your job as the leader to make sure everybody's accountable. And while that's true, if we share in the commitment and we ask ourselves, okay, you guys, today we know this is important. Now, next week, when we got 18 other things coming at us, what do we want to put in place to make sure that we do what we said was important? And whenever I'm working in accountability, whenever I'm having to hold others to account, I always start with going back to what they saw, what they were committed to. That bigger context, what the action is in service of. On our team, we have things that are set up to remind us, about our commitments. We actually have a little kind of form that we fill out in every meeting, and it just reminds us who committed to what and by when. And that little structure itself, we go through at the beginning of every meeting, like, okay, John committed to this by May 3rd and John says it's complete or it's not. And, we don't even talk about why it didn't happen or it did happen. We just say it's complete or not. And we're all really oriented around why accountability. Accountability is to set us up for success on the things that we want to accomplish. And I think as leaders, when we lose sight of that, it does turn into cajoling, and it does turn into force, and it does turn into chasing people down. And also as the performer, it turns into guilt and shame and like avoiding the person trying to chase me down.
Yes.
Keeping things vague so they don't pin me down, but if we're not clear that when we do that, we're giving up on these things that really matter to us.
Yeah. And so let's say somebody's listening right now and they've got their team or their situation and they're in the traditional thinking about accountability, and they've got a team member or team members that are not quite doing what they need to do. What do they do to produce a reset in that next team meeting that's going to come up this week to create a different possibility around accountability, given they're already partway down the neck of this?
Yeah. One could be to share this episode and then talk about, where do you guys think we are? Are we FMC, PMC, or NMC? Or not even ask, just say, okay, you guys, how do we create an FMC condition here? A fully mission capable condition.
I was going to say that was fully mission capable, partially mission capable, and not safe for flight.
Non-mission capable, NMC.
Non-mission capable. Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. So you're just not capable of any mission. So that's one thing you can share. I've had people who share this metaphor, right? And look at, okay, you guys, part of being fully mission capable is that we're each working, we're each doing what we said we were going to do. We can count on that. And we're doing it together. Could you imagine trying to do aircraft maintenance? And I mean, it's really silly. Well, the engine works. I've done my part. I'm the engine, but not connected to like the indicator electronic system right. And so it really is to have an aircraft fly. It has to work in harmony. So when I make a promise to you, if you and I aren't working in harmony, the aircraft's not flying.
We use the distinction a lot of orchestration, that conductor, when the orchestra tunes up, they make the most god-awful noise you've ever heard. And then the conductor steps up and just brings them all together. It's not balanced because sometimes the drums have to be loud and the woodwinds are quiet. It's this orchestration and harmony between them that is key. But I think that simple aircraft metaphor talking about the engine could be such a big deal, because how many people maybe are in a leadership role where they're like, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, I'm doing my part.
These chuckleheads.
Yeah. Or like, well, I do my part, so I don't care about Larice over there. And, well, she's not doing her part, too bad. No, actually, each of our component parts is what's allowing us, and the way we work together is allowing us to do our mission. I wanted to add one more thing, Paul. So one is sharing this and just talking about it as a team. How do we create an FMC condition together? But also, oftentimes when people aren't doing what they said they would do, they either lack structure. So they lack organization. Like they said they were going to do it, but then they forgot. And for that, we actually do have a 2-day course that we're going to be doing in a few months. It's a productivity and accomplishment course, which people can find on our website, grangernetwork.com. And it's all about creating how do you create kind of existence around your word? How do you ensure that when you say you're going to do something, it doesn't just fly away, right? That you can actually, it goes somewhere, and it goes in the place that when it's time to do it, it shows up, it's like prompting you to do it with enough time. And, so some people often lack organization. So that's one piece. You can investigate that, is it what's happening with curiosity? What's happening that you're not getting these things done? Do you forget? Do you need some help with organization and structure? Or I find that people lose context. They lose the big picture. They forgot why that action was meaningful to begin with. And sometimes in organizations, we're kind of guilty of not even giving that meaning at all in the beginning. So sometimes the actions itself lack meaning. I don't know why I'm doing this, or why it's important, or what is it serving? What happens when I do this action? I often find it's either organization, they lack the big picture, or the last one is skill and capacity. They just don't know how to do it. And that becomes a big procrastination thing too. People just don't know how. Like the things I don't know how to do or seem big, I do last. So I get really curious first, rather than coming in and blaming and shaming. I'm wondering, like, is it organization? Is it lack of context? Like, big picture? What is this contributing to? Or is it, do you know how to do this? Do you know the first steps to take? And that's I usually get pretty good momentum if I check one of those three
And
areas.
would that be the same thing you'd give someone as they're going into the week now with this kind of new distinction of, let's not worry about Larissa and whatever she's doing. I got the engine working, but that plane still isn't going to fly. If somebody's listening right now and just had this huge aha of, holy mackerel, I've been fixing engines everywhere, and now we have a whole bunch of engines that work really well also on aircraft that's not fully mission capable, to keep them from going into some version of existential despair as they walk into the workplace this week, what would you suggest that they could look at or talk about with their team, if there is anything else that pops up for you as I ask that question?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that, what are you accomplishing as a team, and not lose sight of that. In our analogy, the aircraft flies its mission. But in your organization, oftentimes we know the one who's not pulling their weight. So even reaching out and asking, how's this going over here? Could you use some support? If I have extra capacity because I'm really proficient at doing my job and I do it right every time and on time, it's like an employer's dream that you then reach out to a team member just to see, like, how's it going? Do you need any support? Oftentimes, even if you don't have maybe I don't know how to do the person in IT's job, I can still, even asking them how it's going, they might say, man, I'm totally overwhelmed. I don't know how to organize I don't know how to handle all these requests. And you may have something to contribute in terms of how to organize, or you could be a thinking partner. I don't know. I don't know what you can contribute, but just being interested in how other people are doing is a pretty big step forward.
As I've said before, these podcasts, I always seem to take something away. I hope that all of our listeners have today, just on this simple idea of whether or not we are fully mission capable, partially mission capable as teams, or non-mission capable, and that we could be in a position we can't get much done. And then what do we need to do with accountability as a starting place instead of an ending place to really create that environment that's favorable for us being able to produce those future outcomes. So thank you again, Kari.
Paul, I wondered at the end of the episode if you could, you presented a challenge that you're having with your clients. What do you, just so our listeners might steal from you, do you see a new action you can take, or do you see a new pathway?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that bubbles up for me is that what I can do differently is start with when people apply to become clients. So we don't try to convince people at all that they should become clients, but rather they apply, and then we let them know what outcomes we can produce, and then they pay their engagement fee. And what I could see doing very differently is focusing on something we talk about in the application, which is their 3-year vision. And then rather than it being here's what the way I position it, these certain things in scope of work right now is, here's where we're kind of difficult to deal with, and you need to let me know if you're willing to sign up for this. If you're not, then it's not a fit. We'll still remain friends, but you need to say no to us. And I could see recrafting that to all be in the context of, you mentioned these things are really important to you and your family's future. And if what we are going to be able to do, to use the words from this podcast, to be fully mission capable to accomplish that, it's going to require both of us do a lot of things that are very different than the typical relationship of somebody who 2 years ago sold you some financial tool. This is a different relationship. I want to talk about how different it is to make sure that you're willing to do all of the things necessary to produce that vision you had for your future. And that's something we're not getting the direct tie to right now. And I could see us absolutely doing that.
Yeah, I could see you doing that on every meeting, is starting with their vision, tying the content, tying the activities at the end. Okay, the activities to reach your vision over the next couple of weeks are go do this insurance inventory, or, just to continuously remember that, finding out where all your money is all over the place and bringing it into one place, which can just be a real hassle to do if you haven't been organized. This is your pathway to your financial freedom begins with these activities this week.
I love it. I don't want the audience to lose sight of it, because I saw it was the artfulness of you giving that feedback. Was that you asked me what I could see doing differently as a result of this. I gave my answer, and you see, and then without even asking, you just said, you know what I could see? And I said, what? Which is like an accepting to the invitation. And then you were able to give your additional feedback. If you guys didn't catch that right there, rewind this podcast about 1.5 minutes and watch the artfulness of Kari giving that feedback.
Thank you, Paul. I don't even realize when I do it. Yes.
if we could all get that proficient. So we're so glad you guys could join us today. As always, thank you to Kari, and we hope this has been a contribution to your leadership impact. Thank you for tuning into Leadership Impact, the podcast for modern executives who are reinventing leadership within their organizations. Subscribe now at Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. And to support you in your leadership impact, we've offered a special course rate to you, our listeners. Just text the word accountability to 555-888 and you'll receive the link. Learn more at grangerNetwork.com and join us next week on how to transform your leadership impact with accountability.